Welcome, everyone. We got ourselves the final of the Esports World Cup happening just last week. I've had some plans being formed on other subjects still related to StarCraft, which is why I haven't gotten to this lickety-split. But I am here now, ready to cast the finals, of which I was simply a audience member, basically. I was on the desk for pre- and post-show, but didn't get my hands on the nitty-gritty details of the games. So, disclaimer, I gotta be real with you guys. There's no point in not being truthful. I do know the results. Nonetheless, I think there's some things that we can get excited about and learn about as we watch these games over again, or for some people out there the first time. In the bottom left of Crimson Courts, we do have Team Liquid's Clem. And in the top right, it is Basilisk's Serral. Basilisk obviously having great StarCraft 2 players to their name, however, not so much a part of the club championships that was going on during the EWC either. Clem, though, for Team Liquid, not only playing for himself, but legitimately very much an important part of Team Liquid's potential second place victory at the club championships, which at the time of this recording actually has still not been resolved. We know who first place was because they just won so drastically, but Team Liquid could still be number 2, and one of the big reasons it could still get something like $3 million, even though they only got second place, is because if Team Liquid Clem does win this best of 9, he would get them their win that you need to actually be competing in the club championships, and he would get them a ton of points as well. So as much as it is cool that Basilisk really supports StarCraft, just, you gotta have, your fingers in a lot of pies to be playing that. And Team Liquid has a finger in almost every esport pie, actually. And almost all of their teams are very good. So kind of cool that alongside what could be an epic best of 9, we also have what is uncommon in StarCraft, which is a real desire to support your team. More than just like, oh, hey, I got you guys good publicity, right? I think that's pretty cool. So, Serral did go for a slightly earlier build here. The hatch and the pool coming down earlier. Gas did come down as well, but Clem going for a very typical 1-Rax expand. Not going to be expecting anything different from him. The last time these two met, Clem didn't really have to change things up a whole lot. Which is really a lot to say. That simple statement is a lot to say, because even though it's something that Clem fans might be familiar with, this guy loves his 3cc and doesn't experiment, particularly when it comes to offline tournaments. He doesn't bother experimenting. But when you consider the task laid out to other Terrans versus Serral, that's a big statement. Other Terrans, any other Terran in the world, would at least feel the pressure to change up from a 3cc. But here you go. Clem going for 3cc once again. Pure mechanical battle right now, as Crimson Court is their first battleground. I don't know how long. Okay, well, Sarah's going for a lair. So how long Sarah will want to play the mechanical game, basically. This is a very difficult map for Zerg players. And in general, the map pool for this particular tournament is not kind to Zerg players. So we are having Serral with a little bit more difficulties than you would usually expect, but keep in mind the map pool was the same for Dallas, where Serral did manage to just clean sweep the entire tournament. So the balance of the maps does affect some things here, but maybe not, it's not the biggest issue perhaps. But I certainly think that this is exactly what Serral likes to do on Crimson Court. He did it before Tomorrow with really good results, actually. So what he's doing here, he's going to grab the lair, he's going to be able to drop creep, he's going to get Overlord speed to bring his queens along alongside a handful of roaches. Now, Clem, definitely in the know, has 100% a good idea as to what's going on here. He sees that there's not a lot of drones. He sees no third base. He saw the lair in the main thanks to a Reaper Scout getting back in, which is really just not ideal for the Zerg player. Basically, as the Zerg player, what you would really want to have happen is for these Hellions to never really dive in. Maybe they see the Roach Warren, but then they wouldn't be able to tell how committed the Roach Warren is. And then they would be a lot more question marks on whether or not a third hatchery is actually down. With all the information Clem has gathered, he 100% knows exactly what this is. He would have also probably noticed it happening with Serral versus Mara, which I'm guessing he would have watched. And so he knows exactly what it is. The question is, does he know exactly how to deal with it? There's actually a little cool anecdote quote from Pig behind the scenes that I wish Pig was casting to actually say this out loud, but if I recall correctly, he was telling me that he actually talked to Clem, and I don't remember if he suggested or Clem was talking to him out loud. I don't recall, but basically Clem doing a 2-1-1 is an excellent answer. 3CC 2-1-1 to be super specific, is actually an excellent answer to a lot of these attacks. And so you might be saying, like, well, what about Factory? What about Tanks? What about Cyclones? Yeah, they're also good, but the neat thing about a 2-1-1 is that you have Stim, you have a decent amount of Marines, and you have Medivacs, highly mobile, highly, the skill potential for Marines is at, the top, right? And so this is actually a good display of why this could be a decent start for Clem's defense. Obviously, he has a bunker, because, again, he scouted it. He sees the incoming attack. He goes for the Overlord as well. That was a big mistake right there from Serral, letting the Overlord basically be seen. I mean, not much I guess he could have done about it, but that Overlord going down basically dismantles the entire attack, of which it was truly committed, guys. Great focus fire on the building Ravager, not gonna let that one go. Other Ravagers coming in at the exact wrong time, not able to be supported correctly by the Roaches, and a good pickup there means you can go back to an SCV pool if necessary, or just the bunker, which apparently is doing the trick. Excellent response from Clem. He scouted, he had a good build against it, he used his build as good as it could be used, and then he took out really one of the most important things about the build, which was the addition of Queens and creep spread as well. And also, what could have happened if he did not snipe that Overlord is that it couldn't have just been a frontal attack. It could have also gone into the main. You put a couple of Queens in there, maybe Queens don't kill buildings that quickly. That's not that terrifying. But suddenly you also have, like, Speedlings in there too. Not that we had speed, but just as a what if. Then suddenly you got two different places to track, and you don't have that many units. So he was able to really simplify the defense right there by tracking it and then killing that Overlord. That is completely nipped it in the bud. Serral hardly even further committing to the attack, despite what is actually a great committal on the macro front. Serral did not have a third hatch, only just now getting that saturated. Obviously, the fourth was going to be even later. Doesn't have really particularly good upgrades. Clem's upgrades are a little farther ahead, not by too much, but still. And you just don't really have another power spike when you go Roaches like this. Roach is actually fairly one-dimensional, you could argue, in that you either have enough or you don't. Ravagers add a little bit more complication to the mix, and obviously if Infestors come out, that adds a lot of complication. But when it comes to pure Roach Ravager, there's actually, I want to say, an easy time for Clem to kind of figure out how he can work against it and how he can beat it. Ling Baneling is just literally more volatile. It is explosive. You look away for 1 second, suddenly Banelings kill 20 Marines, something that Roaches are not really capable of doing in the same way. So, Clem did used to have trouble with Roaches, and this would be where I point to a lot of previous games from Clem versus, for instance, Dark, where Clem had a real block against Dark style of play and Roaches in general 2 years ago. But that was 2 years ago. And so he's really worked and improved on it. He's obviously playing with a lot of confidence. He's building this tank count. He's harassing. He's controlling the creep, especially this forward creep that's being a little cheeky cheek. He's getting rid of that as well. And he will be able to utilize the map's features to kind of increase his chances of winning this game, which I don't think he really needs a lot of help by dealing with that all in. He grabs an Infestor. Oh, Corrosive Bond, I'm not going to hit you. By dealing with that all in like he did, he's already so far ahead that if Serral was in a ladder game, he might have just kind of had tapped out. Honest to God. Obviously, he's not going to do that in a game like this, and there are examples of a Zerg making a comeback by eventually adding on Infestors, eventually adding on Banelings or Lurkers, splash, basically, right? Getting a Nidus Room into the main base, disrupting the Terran momentum. It does happen. But Clem looking rock solid so far, not taking unnecessary risks, not losing a lot of units. The retention is very good so far. We do have a straight up better looking units lost tab. That looks very good for a Terran. And we're already moving on to 4 bases with the Ghost Academy. 2-2 on the way. Actually kind of on the same path of Serral now on 2-2. But the actual quality of bio with Ghosts also about to come through. I mean, it's just really good. I'm not going to sit here and talk about balance, but it is very good. And when a Zerg player is making Lurkers into someone who is on 4 bases with a maxed out army, well, it's not maxed out, but it might as well be, who's also capable of making Ghost, they've already lost the pacing of the game. And ergo, they've already lost the game, which is actually happening right before our eyes. Apparently, Ghost's not going to be necessary. A little concave on top of some of those lurkers. Scan did run out, and maybe there was another one available, but there you go. Tanks are now involved against the lurkers, which means the bio can safely pull back, and Serral's supply just absolutely plummeted. He's still dealing with a drop as well, just to be super annoying. Clem's very good at that, and the supply really is telling the tale. Serral will tap out. The one swift attack through the middle of the map to catch him before he was really set up, ready to go. But even if he was, Clem, like I'd been trying to say, beat him on the pacing. When you looked at the numbers of Serral before that attack happened, maybe you actually had a lot of hope. His supply looked okay. His technology looked okay. His upgrades looked okay. But when you compare it to the safety and foundation that a Terran has built up at this point in a game like this, it's just not comparable. So Clem knows it. He pushes. He abuses the map as well. Very short distance between your fourths, obviously. And tank sieges, very difficult to break around this area too. And he wins game number 1. You got to be a little critical to Serral, actually, for using the exact same build in the same spawn positions, if I recall correctly, as the game versus Maru. That is kind of surprising. But Crimson Court is actually a heavily imbalanced win rate for TVZ. 68%, I want to say, in Terran's favor across the, professional board, which isn't just Serral and Raynor and Clem, right? But it still tells a tale, in my opinion. And I guess as far as Zerg all-ins go and their positions on this map, it's the only thing they can do. Maybe. But Clem, did exactly what he needed to do and was probably very, mentally aware of the build possibility before even coming into game number 1. So not a great start for Serral. Let's head into game 2. Heading into game 2, it is going to be on Golden Aura. Bottom right, Clem. Top left, Serral. Serral goes for the same exact build. I might be missing really small details, extremely small details, but gotta say, that was exactly the same build he did versus Maru on the same map, and was not successful on it whatsoever. Now, as I was saying towards the tail end of that last game, Clem was probably already mentally prepared for such an attack, but the fact that his build order actually also kind of deals with it too is really, really good. And it's a build order that even if Serral did not do the all-in, would set him up for success. You could have called it in the past, I think, one of the greediest ways to open 3CC211, lack of factory units. That factory building gives you kind of the all-rounder defensive units, the tank, the cyclone, even Hellions, instrumental at dealing with Ling Roach all-ins, right? So you're like, oh, I don't have it, then, am I really safe? And there is a period of time in which you are absolutely 100% not safe. You have 2 or 4 Hellions and 3 Marines, okay? You would not win if they were attacking you at that point. But the trick is basically, if you do it flawlessly and nothing else disturbs your build order, and if you are even a little bit greedier, you only go for 2 Hellions, not 4, then you basically get rewarded for the greed fast enough to deal with any incoming attack. That's really the point of any type of greed in StarCraft or any game, actually, is that you learn the pitfalls, what does kill it, you learn how to deal with it, and if you can't deal with it, then maybe that is a actually risky build. But if you kind of have 14 years of meta development, you have perfected and pushed the build the way that it is now, then yeah, you might actually be just correct in dealing with, well, the all-in that Serral chose to do. And it's not that easy before anyone goes out there on the ladder and starts doing 3CC211 all damn day long. You will die. But Clem will not, because he scouts, because he controls all his units, because he has unit retention, because it is a flawless build execution, because he not only does the build correctly, but last game he also moved out and was willing to retreat at the exact right moments. If he's just turtled into his natural, just waiting for the attack to come, that's actually already a very different vibe to that game. So yeah, don't presume that it's going to work out for you on ladder, but it is a solid build if you ever want to learn it. 3CC, once again for Clem. Serral unlikely to go for another all-in because that last one got bopped, but also because it's Golden Aura, and you are talking about a rather good macro map for both parties. So for Serral, this would be really the time in which you would expect him to try his best to get to like that 75-80 drone count, and then just start spamming units all across the map. You know, that's the goal of the Zerg when they're macroing. And usually Serral is very good at getting to that point. But basically, what we kind of have between these two players is actually a battle of the mid-game. So, Terrans are oftentimes... Clem bopped the queen, thought he could get more scouting done, decided not to. Anyway. But, you know, sometimes with the Terran perspective, you know, we say early game and mid game kind of goes to them. They have some of the stronger, maybe earlier attacks than Zerg does. But mid game, we think of them just running around with medevacs and all that, right? And while that is still typically true to the matchup, if we're talking about Ling Baneling or defensive Roach play anyway, I think when it comes to these two players is basically you have Clem at his absolute peak at the mid game, although he's good in all departments. And then you have Serral peaking at the mid-game. You have Serral about to, you know, he's finalized all of his drones, all of his hatcheries, all of his creep spread, and he's ready to now just use units like it's a game of Battle Aces. And it's that moment that can tell you who is going to win. And that's actually been kind of the story between these two for a while at this point. Years ago, Clem definitely needed to do more tricky things to deal with Serral. But if there's one thing that we've learned over the past year and a half is that tricks do not kill Serral. And Clem doesn't need tricks. Insert Arrested Development meme joke here. Anyway, so that's what we're really paying attention to. Clem with a very standard follow-up to his 3CC. We got Hellions on the way. A little bit of nibbling done for some Lings. We got a couple of Banshees on the way, which is very good for safety. They're great for potentially finding the 4th base or even the 5th base and potentially getting a cancel, sure. Occasionally they get a couple of drones, maybe a queen that's off of creep, something like that, sure. But a lot of the time when you're talking about this caliber of player, you're not even bothering to look for Banshee damage directly. But you are looking for the Zerg to consider Banshees. They have to build Spore Crawlers. They have to sacrifice a drone. Oh my god, the Hellen's gonna get a cancel. Oh my god, they are. Yep. Which Serral also anticipated. He was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to do that. The Hellen's out-damage me. All right, okay, cool. But it still sucks. That still sucks. It's just like little interruptions, right? So back to the Spore Crawlers. He had to make Spore Crawlers. He had to make, you know, sacrifice drones. The possibility of a Banshee. Or a Liberator, actually. And he doesn't even know. In this case, you know, very spot on. But in this case also, because he wasn't 100% sure, he doesn't actually have the Overseer prepared, ready to go. I'm not sure when that lair finished, but the Spore Crawler also was not placed on the forward position. And another canceled 4th hatchery is actually, at this point, a disaster. Because Clem's build back at home is basically going flawlessly, except for this moment. Wait a second here. Ling's going to get a ton of SCVs. We got the Marines coming in. Not a whole lot of Marines, mind you, but the SCVs on hold position to protect the Marines just made that an entirely useless run-by. Hello? That was supposed to kill 5 SCVs. And if it had surrounded the Marines, it would have killed the Marines and probably the entire SCV line. That was supposed to be the wrench thrown at Clem's build order. But that never happened. Serral is dodging wrenches like it's the movie Dodgeball. Unsuccessfully, I might add. He had to cancel these bases. Oh my god. And he tried to return the favor and ultimately failed. Clem was some superb micro. Oh, and then his Hellions came back and we're like, missed something? It was like, were we supposed to be on that? Like, oh, sorry guys, we were canceling a 4th hatchery. God, okay. So, we got our first push out, right? 3CC set up for the Terran beautifully, no interruptions, basically. Zerg interrupted over and over again. We got one player playing an almost perfect build order execution versus another player forced to adapt to survive. And in that adaptation... Oh, 12 SCVs just went down. Whew. Okay, well, there you go. All right, something finally going on the side of Serral, but at the same time, he loses that 5th hatchery. Not ideal. Particularly because the 4th CC was already created. I'll get into that in a second. More Ling run-bys trying to do some damage, just mere seconds away from 1-1. That would have helped. I truly believe that. But it does look like more reinforcements are available. That tank would have done friendly fire, but also would have killed the Lings, and that might have been the extent of the damage. Still, 1-1 being finished for that would have been a lot nicer. It also was before Combat Shield was finished, to be fair, so I guess kind of like 2 anti-diamonds, I suppose. Tanks actually siege up behind the mineral lines. They actually fit there? Jesus. Queen's going to try and tank that damage, but Clem is paying attention. You bet he is. One tank finally gets destroyed, but the other one's still going strong. Going to focus fire on top of the Banelings. The Marines also taking down the Banelings. Oh my god, it's a disaster. 13 SCVs do go down as I am distracted, but that was a very costly break. There is a little more tit for tat in this game than the last, but back to my point I was going to make. The 4th CC had started. The amount of just like mental exhaustion you get as a Terran when you're just seconds away from building your 4th and your SCVs die is like, it actually is not quantifiable. Is that the right word? You know what I mean. It is annoying as shit. And it's actually the perfect time for Zerg players to really throw a wrench into things, is to catch the SCV count before the 4th CC is added. When the 4th CC is added and it's not canceled alongside any of these run-bys, losing up to 30 SCVs is actually not that problematic for Terran. That's when you start talking about mules being overpowered. Go ahead. Go right for it. But seriously, Clem, not really missing a beat. Serral, absolutely missing beats. The 5th base going down was also a larva factory. Keep that in mind. So he could have trouble spending his money. He is having trouble spending his money. Creep spread, something he's going to need for the future. Not ideal. His drone count, never ideal. Only just above 70 at this particular fight. Before was below. Still not what he would want. 175, 180 drones on 5 bases with all the creeps around the map. Compare this to his games versus Maru and you'll see what I mean. Clem continuing to force out unit sacrifices while retaining his own army fairly well. Banelings, am I right, guys? Overall, resources lost. Looking good for Clem. Serral maybe finding a foundation. Never mind, I was going to say maybe finding a foundation, but then all of his queens die. As the drop just comes right back in there. Spore Crawlers attempting to make a turret ring are woefully inefficient. They did not help all that much. Serral was not too far away, thankfully, so he does respond to that fairly quickly, but this is not a turret ring, I can tell you that much. Terrans would laugh at this. It's a good attempt, but it might not be enough. Clem on the forefront once again on the left side. He took down the creep spread over and over and over again over the course of this 11-minute game so that Serral no longer has anything to help him stop this army from controlling the high ground. It's it. It's done. It's his. Great. Cool. What do I do now? 11 minutes in, Serral and a lot of other TVZs would have already had a hive done, would have already been working with some parasitic bombs and abducts to take care of this medevac nonsense. And instead is only now starting his hive. Lurker down on the way as well. You're seeing a desperate Serral, despite what the numbers tell you. 170 supply, that's not bad. What's going on here? No, again, the pacing of this game is not good for the Zerg. Something really needs to happen to throw the momentum in reverse. Make Clem stay on his side of the map. Make him forget to do all these drops. Make him forget to do all the Wood of Mine target firing he's been doing. Make him forget to expand. Whatever. Like Clem being able to do mostly what he wants to do. That's always the scary part. And Serral has not had a run by since the last SCV bunch was taken down. 4th base happily mining. 5th done. 6th on the way. Serral finally up to 85 drones. But that has taken way too long. Viper's finally on the way as a couple of upgrades finish up here. Burrowed Banelings could be really cool. But to where they can be used. Talk about that in a second. This army just taking advantage of the high ground over here. Tank helping to anchor. Widow Mines causing complications with how you deal with it. Because you can't tell how many Widow Mines are there either. Your Overseer sees the front ones. What if there's 5 more back here? You don't know. Still got drops over to the right side as well. Finally taken care of. But Serral's creep spread is really not doing them any favors. It is not good. You know, and that's not Serral being bad at it. That's Clem just constantly attacking. But he gets no or very limited advanced warning of attack patterns from Clem and drop patterns from him as well. Once again, going up back to the high ground, such a brutal maneuver. Tank does get abducted. Thankfully, Vipers are out and about. Wood of Mines, though, still popping off, still barely catching Serral's army before he retreats. Marauders adding that frontline chunk that makes this just a little bit more difficult to deal with. Every time a Zerg sees a Baneling explode a Marauder, they just get really, really sad. Lurkers are finally out, though, and that does typically draw a line in the sand. We got Seismic Spines done. That's the range for Lurkers. Their speed will be on the way. Typically, people consider that range to be a lot more important. We got Ghost here, though, as well, and that's going to take care of the Lurkers if they ever get a prime engagement. That was not it, actually. Serral finally getting some room to breathe. Okay, is he, though? All right, every time I say that, there's another army. What the hell? Okay, he is getting room to breathe. He's finally pushed everything back from Clem. There's no drops that I'm not seeing anymore. He's advancing his creep, I guess, as much as he possibly can. Trying to keep this high ground in the Zelnaga would be really great, but I'm not sure it's going to happen. Clem, of course, back at home. 5th base is down. 6th base is somewhere in orbital, actually. 7th is on the way. Serral does have this base now finally saturated. Yeah, he's transferring drones to the right, so Serral is now on 6 bases, 85 drones. That sounds really good, but now the problem is being able to use this moment as much as you would hope that a Zerg player would when they finally push the Terran back, and they might be now depending on maybe like a planetary to hold on to the counter, but there's no counter. This is just really not that scary for a Terran player when they still have over half of the map creep lists, when they know the composition that you were going after, and when they find Lurkers kind of alone. Not alone enough. What the hell, Wood of Mine? You're not supposed to kill a Lurker. Oh, and that's funny. Oh, what the hell happened here? Hold position against the Wood of Mines turned into a hold position surround on Ghosts that were not picked up. They were left behind. Sorry, buddies. Parasitic Bomb split against, so that both medevacs will barely survive. Good lord. Drop on that top right. EMP on top of some Queens and the Infestor, but only after the Fungal went down. Wood of Mine once again getting a shot. The Wood of Mines might not be getting the absolute best shots in this game, guys, but they are very consistently getting shots. And when you, again, compare this to another Serral game versus another Terran, so much more often Wood of Mines will look, well, actually like they're anti-Terran. I remember casting some of those. I remember EWC, I was definitely being like, what the hell, Wood of Mines are supposed to be on our side. And that's not happened at all in this series. No Parasites on the way. Would love to see some Neural Parasite on the Ghost. That would be super cool. Nidus Room finally on the way, too. One of the best ways for a Zerg player to actually get behind enemy lines and cause some kerfuffle. But Clem is all types of ready for that kerfuffle. He's got Marines already stacked up over here. He could be patrolling them just to, like, really super nitpick. But he could. The tank is going to help out with some of the more awkward Nidus Room spots. They try and, like, they come around here with the Overseer and just go right into your production so you don't notice. Tank will help. As well as anything on the 3rd base, which is becoming increasingly depleted and a less important resource. Clem's direction of expansions is now evident. He wants to go to the bottom left, something that Serral was also able to see. Serral not going to let him have it too easily. Would like it for his own. Looks like Clem is distracted. But those Marines do have a concave, so not doing too bad, actually. And while he was distracted momentarily, his setup back at home ends up being unbreakable. Liberator siege up, Ghost threatening a good time whenever they make an appearance. And it looks like a drop also had its little distraction to Serral. Serral deals with everything so far pretty well. He pulls back when he should have. He's ready to... Oh, no, the Vipers just died. Never mind. Oh, boy. Yeah, that's not ideal. The Vipers just died while that was not even really an engagement. That was supposed to be kind of like a pick-off and then escape. Clem kind of taking control in the blink of an eye, actually, on the aggression. This is supposed to be the Terran, you know, taking the best possible defensive fight. And once again, Clem kind of brings it to the Zerg as a little extra spice to it. Finally, Serral breaks on through past the Ghost onto the Planetary, which does go down, possibly because of its own attack. It killed the Banelings, which still splash, even if he didn't detonate them. But that is easily, quickly, conveniently replaced by another command center, no problem. Holy smokes, it's a good fungal, but the DPS isn't there. That was an excellent fungal, but where the hell is Serral's army? Where is his Remax, his larva? He has no larva. He could not remax. He had the resources, I think, for a full remax. He had already rebuilt the Viper, so he just needed Ling, Baneling, Hydra. And he couldn't even get that far. And now he's just losing supply because he's losing the freaking game. But, man, you gotta have the fungal like that combined with a still powerful army, and that is missing. Serral, you know, also every time he shows the Infestor, every time he pops up with a fungal like that, he's reminding Clem, hey, I have fungals. Hey, you should probably scan whenever I try to engage you. Top right base going to be used as a Nidus Worm as well. I really do love this addition that Serral's been showing us in all of his games. He'll use the Nidus Worms as a Nidus Canal, like Brood War. And it might sound repetitive, like, okay, why bother? But the amount of times that his drones would have died to a drop or a run by or a redirect of the aggression, and he saved them instead, is actually, at this point, countless. He has done it so often. And 20 drones in a game where you are out of money, obviously important. 20 drones, even if you're at a point where you're like 10,000 resources, also still kind of important. Baneling's not really getting the connections. Little last second split right there means that Clem holds on to the location. Just little bits of Terran popping their heads up after the dust clears and going, hey, we're still around. We're still better than you are. Always a lovely thing for Terrans. The Zerg player thinks they've swarmed the entire army and that they're pushing the Terran back, and then like 5 Marines to like come in with guns ablazing. Once again, great micro against that parasitic bomb. Fungal on top of some Liberators will cause their deaths. Widowmine's also being taken down rather efficiently, I would say, that time. But Serral, with that really big moment right there, you know, the immediate counterattack from Clem combined with his lack of resources, his lack of ability to instantly remax, you know, misses the chance with the fungal and then misses the chance to maybe keep the pressure on, is now once again mostly on the defensive. Vipers once again getting taken down. Hydras all by their lonesome have to be very careful about trying to take on Liberators because the bio is right there, right next to him. Another Viper comes in only to be shot down. Yep, that snipe will go through. How many Vipers have lost their lives? 5 in this game, 2 more being remade. That actually is very expensive. Infestor getting set up for another Shark attack. But can Serral deliver the follow-up? I don't see any Banelings. The Hydras will not win this battle. Liberators just siege up. Freedom! Freedom! That is how Serral loses game number 2, by freedom. Also, he had an 80 supply deficit. But still. Liberators did not care and just siege up over an army. That is not how you want to see the last moments of a game slip away. I really wonder, though, if Serral had been able to instantly remax when he kind of was supposed to, could that have actually been a really good game? I mean, it was a pretty good game. Compared to the last one, it was great. But even if he had been able to remax instantly, I still don't really trust the process for the Zerg in a game like this. They still don't have that big of a bank. They still don't have the map taken. Their creep spread is abysmal. They're losing key units everywhere you look. But could have been better. I think this is around the time that he was supposed to be kind of remaxing at this point. Okay, that was a colossal waste of life. I mean, he stuck around too long. You know, the chase is pretty much expected from Clem. And that's why at Atlanta, he seemed to get punished extra hard by Infestors. Because he always chases. And Serral would have known that, but it's like, I'm sure he had the setup. I'm sure he saw this and his eyes got like momentarily wide for like 0.01 seconds. And then he was like, I don't have enough for it. Oh, the Infestor. Oh, I don't have enough. Okay, whatever. I'm just going to try anyway. Because what else are you going to do? Let them chase you down? Yeah, even if he had 30 more supply actually being made right now, or even just popping out and running forward, he still wouldn't have been here in time. Plus, he wouldn't have been able to make the Banelings on time. Yeah, never mind. Yeah, that didn't actually matter. Ripperino. Clem with basically no faults that game, too. And the Widow Mines were like a 90% success rate. Alright. Serral, down 0-2. And we're into game number 3 of this best of 9. The first best of 9 in a premier tournament. In the top left of Ghost River, it is Serral. And in the top right, we do have Clem. Ghost River, also a very difficult map for Zerg. Something like 69% win record for the Terran. Nice. But seriously. Point to those stats, not because it is truly indicative of the toppity-tippity-toppitest players in the world, but rather that when it swings one direction that far, even amongst the not as good professionals, that still probably means something. And one thing that we saw during this entire tournament actually was some Zerg experimentation on this map against Terran specifically, yet kind of a almost agreement that it was not going super well, that they probably shouldn't play Ghost River. Not something that Serral could have stopped, unfortunately. If Serral also was like, you know what, my other ZVT series I lost here too, I don't really like how it's working out for me. Tough luck, sucker. You have to play it because best of 9 maps, veto system, there's none, there's just a choice system. So, yeah, when you're, you got like maybe the bad map first, you try an all-in, you get that out of the way, no problem, don't worry about it. Potentially 8 more maps to go. Grand scheme of things might not be important. Second map, kind of decent for you. You lose in a pretty straight-up game too. Not feeling great, but hey, still a best of 9. Could happen. Oh, the third game, oh, it's on this map. Not really great for the whole positivity thing. Serral, not one to look rattled during a tournament, though. I would hopefully take this in stride. He did know it. He might have forgotten it temporarily during some of the high-speed action of the last game. Doesn't come as a surprise to him. Does he have any tricks for it? Is there anything to show us as to why this actually isn't too bad of a map for Zerg? He did talk about having developed some specific strategies for the map pool against Terran. Something that Oliveira, let's say, let slip. Just directly said in an interview, but probably wasn't supposed to. Whoopsie-daisy. But while we did see that work out once on Crimson Court against Maru, the supposed new trick, this new build that he had specifically for that map in that matchup to work, failed horribly against Clem. So he has another cool thing. He has another great all-in. He has another thing that worked against all the other Terrans in the world on Ghost River. Might not work versus Clem. So, 2 bases so far. Clem did SEV scouts, wants to make sure he's not being early attacked or even just distracted by an early pool, just a couple of lings, right? Also, then you can use the SEV scout, and I highly recommend anyone out there who's playing StarCraft, just SEV scout. The minerals you're losing is not important to us plebs. Because what you can also do is just annoy the hell out of the Zerg, and really, the game of StarCraft is about annoying your opponent as much as possible. Pretty sure that's in the rules. And an SEV blocking the third while the Reaper then gets to have its happy fun time blocking creep, killing a queen, whatever it does, is just, the Zerg just can't do anything about it. They just have to live life with that situation. Bunker could be credited too for extra annoyance. Not that Clem would do that. Clem pulled the SEV back. At this point in time, he's like, okay, no third. Okay, no third. Okay, no third. Come on. Okay, are you going to 2-base all in me? Like, what are you doing, buddy? And this is not necessarily, okay, the Reaper does die, 100% indicative of an all-in. There are a couple of 2-base Zerg macro builds versus Terran. It pretty much is. It's pretty much a scout. You don't have that many. Serral himself had experimented with some 2-base Roach macro play versus Terran, but I think that was very much an experimental time for him. And far more we would expect something like this. Roaches are on the way. Lair is done. Hellions triple, quadruple checking. The third hatchery is, in fact, not on the way. The longer that's delayed, of course, the more all-in it becomes, but also just if they do decide, like, hey, it's not going to work, let's drone, the worse that choice is, too. And it's just annoying! It's just... I feel like Serral wants to, like, just reach over on the side of the stage and just, like, clasp Clem's head in his hands and be like, stop it. Fucking stop it. Oh my god, are you kidding me? Oh my god! This is so annoying. Oh my god. The Hellions die on their last little annoyance. They get a scout on the Roaches. How perfect is that? Clem, not going to be able to bunker in time, but once again, that's the question of does he have enough time to get enough Marines to have a proper fighting force. And right now, I think it's actually very questionable. I think this is extremely scary. Clem actually might not have realized that it's really committed to, you know, pushing out with the third CC, easy, that lifts, like, no problem. But pushing out with his Marines? That's a little sketch, isn't it? Good news is you can just pick up and go, oh shit, never mind. Right back into the main base he goes. Call down supplies. He is going to get supply block, not because he was, because he realized those depots are going down. Wow, that is a really good attention to detail at the last second. Holy shit. Combat shield still not finished. 1-1 not going to begin because, well, in a game like this, he might even not need it. If he defends with anything less than, I don't know, 30 SCVs killed, he's fine. Marines stimmed, powering up here, not being attacked in turn makes them a superhero. The SCVs doing their duty in blocking the attacks, allowing the Marines to focus purely on their DPS. Tank also sieges as the Queens finally make their way across the map to be completely useless. And that was an excellent hold with limited capabilities. If those Marines were in turn being attacked, they actually die a little bit faster. That would have been the main problem. No combat shields, Medevac eventually, you know, runs out of energy, and just in general DPS could have been good enough. But those SCVs body blocking were instrumental. And Serral is not tapping out of this game, but this game is effectively over. Only 19 SCVs went down, while the third CC is still producing SCVs on location. Hello, that's not supposed to happen. Serral agrees, but then really can't do anything about it. As soon as he moves his attention over to that third CC, the Marines jump on top of his Ravagers. He tries to take advantage of the Marines being loaded, but only grabs one tank. In turn, gets his entire army killed. Maybe not you, maybe not you, maybe not you. Run, little buddy. Squappy! Oh my god, it actually survived. Okay, well, that, you know, to be fair, the guy survived in Deliverance, too. Anyway, that was the only thing that survived. Third CC was producing SCVs while the all-in was held. And with the 3CC setup, with your production already set up, with stim already done, combat shields on the way, engineer base not burned down, you could easily lose 30 SCVs and still be fine as the Terran. 30 SCVs would have been the minimum for making it an even game, I think. And it only got 17, 18. Crazy. And once again, this is a ladder game. Serral just taps out. He's like, oh, tried it. Oh, well, that sucks. But it's the EWC Championship Finals with $400,000 on the line for first place. You're not going to tap out too easily. Clem just having a field day back at home. A little late to his armor upgrade. Obviously, his build did get thrown off, but not nearly as much as Serral's build got thrown off. Just going to keep that harassing. While he also pushes through the middle of the map, clears up whatever creep spread Serral was able to muster from his limited queen production. He's only at 4 queens right now. That's 3 injects and 1 creep tumor queen. No transfuses. Which he kind of needs, actually. Also, not a reliable anti-air squad. You can see that all 4 queens stacked up in the main means that they are going to miss creep. They are going to miss injects. But there's no other choice because he knows that this was going to happen. He knows it was going to happen, and he cannot stop the hatchery from being canceled. Ay, ay, ay. There's a little evolution chamber. Micro trick to save the drone was pretty cool, actually. But overall, still a win for Clem. There's a brief half-second where a canceled hatchery has creep, according to the game. So you can build an evolution chamber on it. Use to save drone in this game used to be extra annoying versus Protoss with like a hatch block in other games. That's a very bold move right there. Clem picks up 3 medevacs worth of units while the roaches were in sight of that. Infestors were waiting, but then both of them were like, I don't know if we want to take this fight. So both of them just escaped. Clem not gonna give up on the attack. Does just kind of take a more indirect path while having the rest of his army that he left behind, dealing with the remains of the creep spread up to the top side. Again, very difficult for Serral to replace that. Has yet to get creep over to the left because his queens have been so busy. He doesn't have any creep spread between his 3rd and the 4th base. You know how often that happens with Serral? Basically never. 1-1 Marines with medevacs on their side dismantle the limited roaches protecting that fourth base. Excellent grab there for the bio. Well, that is not all of Clem's firepower. He still has this kind of drop over to the right side and a growing tank count back at home with more barracks on the way. 4th Command Center floating over. 2-2 starting as Serral, just shy of being able to afford +2 missile, perhaps. Emphasized Carapace, which is the logical thing to do. Terran want to emphasize weapons. Zerg wants to emphasize Carapace, but you want both. And Serral can't get both. It's not looking good for Serral. He has survived. He's matched the supply of his opponents. But pacing is the key thing here. Clem, the expectations are high for him, but he's matched the expectations thus far. Would not lose the plot of this game at a moment like this. He knows exactly how Serral could try and make his way back into it, and exactly how he could throw, because he's done it before. Brutally honest, he's done it before. And he's making sure that doesn't happen. Nice little defensive setup right here. Bit of a concave, a tank sieged up. Starts off the fight decently well. It might look okay for Serral, but more reinforcements are available. Tanks coming forward. Planetary on the way to finishing. Plus, there's a drop somewhere that is looking to do return damage, in case he did actually break through, but this is not looking good for him, actually. Now, with all the tanks on the forefront, more Marines joining in as well. This actually looks really bad for Serral, as Clem goes for the chase. The Infestors are out of juice. A tank on the high ground helping out, and Serral's supply once again plummeting when push actually came to shove. And then Clem, now at a 3-0. Game number 4 will be on Post Youth. In the top right, it is Serral. In the bottom left, it is Clem. Clem now up 3-0 in a best of 9. Has to get a total of 5 wins to win here. Going on to a map that is different. A favorite to Terran, I believe, but not as much as the previous mentioned maps. It might not be so bad for Zerg, but I don't know if it's really ideal. And what I would say is especially unideal for the situation is that Serral is down 3-0. And he's on a map where I believe it is kind of difficult to really get aggressive if he's thinking of some way to interrupt Clem's macro by just a couple of jabs, maybe. You know, not necessarily all in. But, you know, one of those early pulls that sends 6 slings across the map and hides 2 of them, so they miscalculate. Or, okay, well, to be fair, there's not that many other options. But the point is, you can't do it on this map. So, you know, the second CC goes into the natural. It is very well protected. Both of you have that little boost from the gold. The third CC then gets to be put down at a location that does have multiple entries, but they are pretty choky. Or, well, I guess it could be a triangle as well, actually. And, you know, it's definitely not the most amazing setup. On the third CC, I could see some problems there for a Terran defending. But these bases are pretty much locked down. So, kind of an easy way to get the 3CC when the same can't quite be said for a Zerg player. You know, they don't have the quick access to air like a Terran does with the starport. So, and they need that extra base faster than the other races as well. So even if the 2 bases are safe, the third one is less so. That kind of hurts the Zerg. Fourth base, also not very ideal for Zerg players. They could take a 4th at the gold here, but then they have this whole high ground situation that is not super, super cool. And then they have this other 4th over here to the left side, which is actually okay. Some chokes to use that's very scary for Terrans to push through, but then you start just worrying about how small the map gets really quickly. When your opponents, when you start to get to that 4th, 5th, 6th base points, and the Terran is kind of expanding towards you, so they have a jump-off point with a protective planetary, you feel very claustrophobic as a Zerg player. It's not the worst map for that particular phenomenon, but it will come into play at some point. There's definitely worse maps. Crimson Court being probably the worst as far as the 4th base of planetary, right next to yours. Anyway, Serral, he's not had an ideal Zerg game thus far. 2 games are all-ins. 1 game was a macro game in which he was constantly interrupted. His 4th base was canceled twice, and he never got to the foundation that he would want, 85 drones, 4 or 5 bases, 5 bases, that you would see him get to almost too fast versus other Terrans. You'd blink and you miss it, and you're like, what the heck? Why is he already in a fantastic position? He's not getting there. Perhaps post-youth finally could be that situation where he actually does get to that economy, that setup. He is on 3 hatch. He is grabbing a roach horn. But I'd be very surprised if he used this in any type of super aggressive capacity. Kind of cute, though. Much of a wall he's building, by the way. Queen's having trouble getting creep tumors down. So one was killed. Reaper is going to jump into the main base, and then Hellions are going to be used to stop any Lings from chasing him. Just that little extra. And in this case, there are no Lings. Serral does typically try to go very greedy on this map. You can't really punish the Zerg, actually, either. We've seen some people try and emphasize, like, Reaper attacks here, 2 or 3 barracks. But we've seen how that works against the likes of Serral. You're like, oh, he doesn't have speed. Oh, he doesn't have a lot of Lings. Like, this looks really dangerous. And then he just micros perfectly, and it's not a problem. So really, post-youth is kind of a nice one to get that Zerg macro up and running for the beginning of things. Serral's pretty much been doing. He built literally 2 Lings. Literally 2 Lings, guys. That's a pretty greedy Zerg. And Clem, not going to be able to find any avenues of attack here. Only with 2 Hellions anyway. Pretty much not worth diving. But now Serral kind of consistently acknowledging it's 2 Hellions, it's 2 Hellions, it's 2 Hellions. Has a kind of good idea, actually, as to what Clem's build was. The thing is that Serral doesn't really have to scout so dedicatedly, because apparently Clem is just going to do the same thing every single game. 4th game in a row. But you never know. So, of course, he is doing his typical Serral thing and getting very great scouts. Like, this was pretty much perfect. But even if he didn't, the 2 Hellions are a big reveal. Unless it's a big brain maneuver in which he's hiding 6 other ones in an armory somewhere. Which would be pretty cool. But it also not just means 3CC. It also really heavily emphasizes that whole, like, okay, 2-1-1 again, right? The factory is not being used a whole lot. It's being used to make add-ons. It's being used to eventually make tanks. So, you know, he should have a good gist of how this game is going to go. Serral going to defend the first drop by the Queens being in such a forward position. Clem was just simply surprised. Perhaps also a little surprised by him taking this as the first 4th. It's not uncommon, but maybe I was just hoping those Queens weren't in position. Gets the cancel anyway. The Queens push off the medevac for 5 seconds to give Roaches time to walk over, and that should have been no cancel in that type of ideal setup, but theory is different from execution, so it gets canceled anyway. Overlord gets sniped as well, and this is now becoming perhaps an increasingly larger problem. Roaches do not track medevacs. I don't know if you guys know this, but Roaches, they don't react particularly fast, even with speed, even on creep. Speed finally finishing up here. They don't shoot up either, and I am not a fan of them shooting up. Marauders, okay. Roaches, not. Oh my god. The Hellions and the Reaper just killed 6 drones? Alright, I was distracted by the drop, and so was Serral. Anywho, that would be the biggest problem with Roaches. And, you know, Hydras might eventually get added on. Roach Hydra not particularly strong, but maybe, and then some anti-air. Queens could be better positioned. But it's really about pre-positioning for Zerg players to deal with any type of hyperactive Zoomer kid like Clem. You gotta have the right amount of Roaches and Queens in the right place at the right time. And that gets easier the longer the game goes, technically, because then you have just so many units to spread around. But then the conundrum is spreading units too thin, and then the Terran just doing like a frontal push when you're not expecting it. So it's not easy. And Clem, you know, not really having to worry about his side of the map either against a very Roach-based play, because, again, they're not speedy. You know, the first thing he has to worry about seeing the Roach Ravager is it a Roach Ravager all in? When you see the Infestors, when you see the drones, when you see the Hive, like there's a couple different tells you can see that says it's not the 1-1 Roach all in, then you're not really worried about your home base. And then Serral gets maxed out and eventually can be aggressive too, of course, but there's a period of time where Clem just doesn't have to worry. So he can do the drops, he can build up his tank count back at home, he's not doing a forward push, he doesn't want to. He can focus on the drops and make sure that his home base is totally fine. 4th base is on the way, 2-2 has started up, lickety split, +1 vehicle weapons as well. Serral getting to 72 drones, going up to 5 bases, probably going to add on the last 10 drones once that's a little more completed, is in one of the better positions for him. Yeah, the best position so far in the series. Yeah, I think you can say that. Ultra's Cavern's on the way. Upgrades on the way for him as well. Vipers, I think, already popped. Yep, they did. Infestors are ready. The Shark Attack. And this is supposed to be Serral in prime form, but it's also kind of Clem in prime form, too. He's going to take that forward fourth base as the gold. Ditto to Serral, but it doesn't really clash into each other as of yet. It is still basically a jumping off point for the Terran, but it's obviously a little more complicated. You know, the Zerg can get back behind the minerals. The Zerg can just kind of run by you. The Zerg can get multiple angles if they do decide to attack into it, which maybe Serral is going to. Oh, okay. Be Gucci. But, you know, even if you do get a prime angle and a prime position to attack into it, it is still planetary. It is still going back into a tank line that is on high ground, so you do have to be careful with how you actually take this. 5 Overlords on the way. Serral, allowed to do his thing, his build, his style. Does love putting this in around this time, every single game that he can. Parasitic Bomb, once again, hoping to collect a few more Medivacs. Will grab none. Stop it. It's unfair. Stop doing that to Serral. Stop it. Ghosts are on the way, which means that Serral's advanced technology was simply a little blip. Now Ghosts, kind of the supreme technology. Vipers are going to look lamer. Infestors are going to look lamer if they're not... Well, if they're scanned, anyway. If they're not scanned, they're going to look really good. And Clem, I gotta say, as someone who catches a lot of the Open Cups, almost every one over the last, 3 years... Clem went through a month-long phase of practicing Ultimate Turtle Terran. It was like a year and a half ago or something. But he practiced, and he was pretty good at it. And that seems to be the mode that he has switched on right now. He doesn't have the ability to get that one swift up-the-gut type of punch like in the previous macro games, but he doesn't necessarily need it either. He can play this super defensive style. Another attack over into this base. Little avenues actually causing some complications. You know, Banelings do not want to be rolling into a choke against these tanks, for instance. Parasitic Bomb, once again, not going to grab these Medivacs. Come on. And the Overlord's just chilling. Clem clearly prepared for something like this. Either Overlord drops or Nidus Worm. You know, the defense is going to look similar from both angles. Of course, when it comes to the drops... You actually should get a confirm. Oh my god, he actually revealed it, didn't he? Oh, yeah, he did. Oh no. Oh my god, okay, yeah, he literally parked them in vision. I was gonna say, with drops, you expect all of your army to unload. Just kind of through force of will. Where Nidus Worm, obviously, one unit could kill it. Well, if the army is already responding to it, it's not nearly as effective. So that was just a little gaff there from Serral. It's going to try and... What the hell is going on here? Whoa! What is that Ultra doing? Is this Stormgate? What's going on? I don't think this happened, actually, in the cast. Oh my god! All the Ultras are doing it! I broke the game! I should not have rewinded. Okay, we're just gonna get slide ultras at this point. That's funny. That's so funny, actually, because 100% this doesn't happen in the game. This would be too big of a bug. Can you guys just visualize them chomping? Okay, thank you. So yeah, don't rewind a game. So, Serral tries to go for the 1-2 punch. Not really as effective because it was telegraphed, basically. Clem knew exactly what was going to happen from the drop to the secondary attack. If there's one thing I know about this game is that it goes on pretty long, so we're going to see a lot of ultras gliding around. Overlord drops, sulking back, just planting some creep. Not much else they can do. This game really is much better for Serral, though. He's got good creep spread. He's taken up most of the map. He's got some kind of safe bases that only drops can try and contest. He has creep spread. He has a bank. That's the other one. He's a bank. He's got actually over 90 drones as he realizes how long this game is going to go and what style of play Clem is doing. And Clem also very much acknowledging, I think, this type of game. And also using the map to its strengths. We know that Clem can play a super late game TVZ that is like 2 or 3 packs of bio ghosts running around everywhere, because that's what he did versus Serral in Atlanta. But he doesn't have to, and really the topography of this map, it's a fancy word right there, it really does scream turtle and abuse the chokes, doesn't it? Whereas, you know, the vision of him just microing all over the place to try and, you know, macro battle against Serral in Atlanta, that was a much larger map with a lot more open space. So, you know, I'm just obviously Clem's playing well enough already. I don't really need to give him compliments, but also just he is showing flexibility here. I know a lot of people are going to look at the ghost count and be like, la 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 la, ghosts, and ghosts are absolutely a instrumental part of late game TVZ. But there are ways, plural, that the Terran could play this stage. And this one seems like by far the best for this map in this scenario. And ghosts. And get it all ghosts. Easy. We got Blue Flame on the way as the 3-3 upgrades do finish. 3-2-1 on the side of Serral as he is now grabbing both attack upgrades, so we'll improve on that. He also got double Spire, so he's preparing for an eventual Broodlord transition. Now that is just a logical play for Zerg players to, one, expand their tech options, just in case something does make sense at the time. But then, two, it makes the most sense for a map that's getting more and more condensed. And it's kind of a skinny map as well, post-youth. I've been talking about these chokes, also something that Broodlords would love to take advantage of. And three, Broodlords are supposed to be more cost-efficient. So as you start to worry about the actual minerals and gas available on the maps, you're going to want to worry, how do I stop sacrificing my units into their own death? Because Baneling's just not going to cut it once you're counting pennies. So that's going to happen eventually. But 14.5 minutes, maybe not quite time for the Broodlords yet. For Terrans, rather simple to deal with Broodlords. Ghosts, yes, but then also the acknowledgement of Broodlords. As soon as the Terran goes, oh, you're going Broodlords, they're going to pay more attention to where the ghosts are and where their tanks are siege and how their tanks fire and the focus fire. And, you know, they might even add on Vikings, maybe get more Liberators to help out, maybe actually put those Blue Flame Hellbats on the front lines. Like, their tools are pretty much the same, but the mentality against the Zerg changes slightly once you realize they're going for more air. Clem even establishing some SimCity in the very middle of the map. This is usually where tanks are just going to be beautiful, but a planetary missile turret's also on this high ground. Beautiful. High sec auto tracking on the way. Building armor already done. I would love to even see some bunkers that could include 2 more Marines. Thumbs up. That'd be cool. Attack upgrades and armor upgrades for the tanks, Woodamines, and Medivacs, all benefiting from the armor. And Woodamines, I don't think we have any. Personal cloaking for the ghosts as well. We've reached that stage, guys, where both players, Terran and Zerg, are just rounding out all of their tech options, all of their upgrades. There's not... I'm not going to say there's not a lot going on, because these guys are still going a mile a minute. I mean, look at the APM right now. That was perfectly timed. They're still playing some very fast StarCraft, but things have calmed down as far as, like, the mental checklist. You know, it's in... Perhaps, actually, the mental checklist might be more exhausting for the Zerg at this point, because they know that it's up to them to try and find the weak point of the Terran and break it. The Terran obviously wants to stop there from being any weak point, but yeah. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, usually you don't see these guys mess up on these Supreme late game upgrades because the game has kind of become one-dimensional. I don't mean to insult it, but I'm thinking we're also going to see like Caduceus Reactor come out too. Raider Spire, obviously. More upgrades for the air. And then just wherever Serral can find damage. What a beautiful game to choose to have the Ultra Bug in effect. Beautiful. Nidus Worm actually doubling as both an evacuation point and just a fast saturation point. These two bases so close together, that's really quite cool. The problem for Serral is that he's not found a weak point. If you guys haven't been looking, I'm not missing any moments that are really worth talking about. Clem advances and Serral panics. That's basically what's happening. But yeah, there's no one moment that is screaming Serral's in trouble. But the entire game is basically screaming that. Because you look at a Serral that's at 10,000 minerals in the bank, 3,500 gas, that's okay, not great. But, you know, 10,000 minerals. And you're like, well, this is Zerg in its prime position. Well, yeah, but also, how do you actually kill Clem? I mean, that's kind of the question. Right now, we already have a situation with very few engagements where Clem is at half the resources lost of his opponent. Typically, when it comes to ZVT in the late game, we can actually use some general numbers to give an idea as to what's good and bad. 8,000 resources lost by the Zerg compared to the Terran is okay for the Zerg, actually, depending on how many bases they've taken and how many more they could take. More than 10,000, and you start to really worry about the Zerg. They're going to have their one-punch moment if they're going to continue losing at a rate like that. So we do have our right now an 11,000 resource difference. So yeah. The StarCraft, not often a game that you can reduce the numbers, but actually late game ZVT, that's kind of one of the ones you could. Things could still go sideways. Broodlords, plus Neural Parasite, plus in Fungals, plus Blinding Clouds. That could still be good. Ugh, Overseer's going down. It's not what you want, as the Overseer creation does cost gas. The Overlords you don't really care about, but Overseers you do. Ghost now just running around sniping things because all the Overseers died. Why not have a field day? All the Infestors just got sniped. Serral, there we go! Okay, Ultras finally get killed. Oh my goodness, 13 Infestors are on the way. I mean, Infestors are pretty good. The thing is that right now what he needs to do with the Infestors, I think, is actually to get the perfect EMP on the Terran's army. You neural a Ghost and EMP, and it's so far not working. Missile turrets are around, buddy. But also, the Ghosts are not all types of stacked up. And there is now a lot of room for Clem to disengage should he take one of the worst fights possible. If he ever actually takes a bad fight, all 20 Ghosts get fungled and he goes, oh shit. He has a lot of room to back up. And apparently doesn't have to. Despite a fungal starting off that battle, this is not looking too bad for Clem. Splits away those parasitic bombs. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. EMP plus the snipes on the Infestors that come around. Broodlords had to skedaddle as they realized they weren't going to win that fight, and the Ghosts stand strong all by their lonesome. For the most part. Shout out to the tanks, kind of helping, kind of. This is a spooky mech army, basically. 20 Ghosts, 17 tanks, couple Liberators, very, very little on the bio. And that's the perfect Terran late game. Add in some Hellbats and some Thors, and you really got the best possible Terran army. Yeah. Oh, and Liberators. Yeah, but those are already here. The answer to this army from the Zerg player really is just excellent spellcaster control and proper positioning, which is extremely difficult to do. Ghosts get an EMP, even though they got fungled, and a couple of them will die. More Broods are going to die because the Ghosts on the left side are not getting fungled as the Infestors run away from the Ghosts on the right side. So a little split of the Ghosts causing a more complicated engagement for Serral. He's been losing bases, by the way, as I've been talking. That's just been a very consistent thing. Clem's been going over, killing the bases. Serral can't redirect his entire army quickly because Broodlords are still a slower army. His Nidus Worm can only pump out, obviously, ground units to help, which, especially if they're coming out one at a time, is particularly helpful. And Serral has lost, actually, the bottom base, the 6 o'clock, which Clem is now taking. Some minerals and gas still left over. He's about to lose the 5 o'clock base, and he already lost the 3 o'clock. Don't know how that happened in that pattern, but it did. So Serral is going to be down to just 2 mining bases very soon. Now, again, not a whole lot of engagements have happened. So Serral still has 12,000 resources in the bank, despite losing some bases. The problem is, despite very few engagements, the resources lost is abysmal. It is oh my god, that pick up the dodge the fungal was fantastic. Oh my goodness. Ah! That is such a huge difference. 19,000? Okay, we got some trades on the bottom right side, sorry. Lings, finding tanks relatively undefended. Planetary can only help out so much. Tried to improve the resource loss trade. Hardly did. And it looks like, funnily enough, he killed the hatchery, got distracted, and then only now is going back to kill the Nidus Worms. I guess that's what happened. Serral trying to just figure out what exactly is the right move. So far, nothing has worked. Everything that he's tried has failed. He still has a bank to try something when he figures out what actually works. He could try it. He just doesn't seem to be finding anything that works right now. And this is looking like one of the most perfect late-game Terran versus Zergs you could ever witness in your lifetime. The map abuse is strong with this one, no doubt. Broodlord's getting what they can. The tank so far. A 9 Broodlords actually is not that impressive. Fungal on top of some of the units, but Morgos come on the right side. More Fungals on everything to try and stop the snipes from going down, but it looks like too many snipes already happened. Yeah, basically that's what happened. The snipes went down, the Broodlords died before the Fungal really got to affect anything. Not to mention the rest of the army that would still need to be conquered, even if Serral had broken through the front lines. You got planetaries, tanks, liberators, more reinforcing ghosts. I mean, I will say it is really critical that Clem never once moved away from his static defense with his main army. As much as we're witnessing what seems to be a very, very, very sad Zerg versus Terran. Everyone's kind of feeling it right now for Serral. Kudos have to be given to Clem. He moved away from his main static defense. Beautiful MP. This is going to be an unsuccessful attack from Serral. The bank across the Thor! You don't even have to do this! You don't even have to! Okay, finally lets 2 Thors die. He's been using tiny bits of his army to kill hatcheries, but his actual main army has remained in place on the high ground with the static defense that Serral didn't stop from happening. I know I'm sounding like I'm like victim blaming right now, but it's like, you know, I mean, with the kind of perfect game that we're seeing here from Clem, arguably the answer to Serral when he says, is Terran too strong, is don't let them get there. It's an age-old Reddit comment. But I think that might have been his problem in this game. Because you just don't have, again, like the lack of fear here from Clem. I know he's probably actually like shaking like hell right now on stage, but the realistic lack of fear, I guess, like what could actually kill him is very limited. And so what could kill him is being completely out of position at any point. Liberators looking the wrong direction, tanks getting blinding clouded because they got clumped up and they were too quick to siege, Thors getting neural parasited, and a whole clump of 20 ghosts getting fungaled repeatedly. That's the magic. That's where, you know, Terran players eventually have to make a move like that on other maps. They have to move away from their solid defensive setup, and then the Zerg takes advantage of it. But this is a map that is actually extremely choky. And Serral has just been pushed inch by inch to back to his 4th. I think this is his 5th, actually. Clem, with a more aggressive form of Spoon Terran. He's a Fork Terran, okay? Has officially dismantled Serral. This is a very sad last-ditch attempt to break through. Microbial Shroud included. A real testament to how sad that spell is. As Serral taps out of game number 4. And is now in his last life. And it's game number 5, potentially the last of this best of 9. In the bottom right, it is Serral for Team Basilisk. And in the top left, it is Clem for Team Liquid. So Serral did tap out of last game with a bank, for anyone calls me out on it. But I think you could have listened to the cast or watched the games casually, and you could have told why he tapped out, because he actually found no solutions to the problem. Zero. Zilch. Nothing worked for Serral. He tried to get Ling run bys, he tried to do the drops, he tried to get Nidus rooms in the main probably that I probably missed, but Clem did not. He tried to get tech swaps, he tried to go air, he tried to go for a lot of spellcasters, and nothing broke Clem. So why stay in that game? Because especially if he also would agree with the sentiment, I shouldn't have let him get there, which is not generally a sentiment a pro would ever agree on, but I don't know. Yeah, why try and complete that game? Like, move on to the next one and hope that the early and mid game goes a lot better for you, and that the late game maybe isn't as abusive. Because, I mean, Oceanborn's a great example of a different type of map to post-youth, which is, yes, Clem gets 3 bases. Yes, he pretty much gets 4. You know, 2 big chokes right here. The 5th becomes a lot more questionable, as you want to defend your 4th, and then you have to run all the way over to your 5th. It's a little more troublesome. If the 5th gets demolished, there's a real domino effect into the natural, into the main as well. Then the 6th is very questionable. It is very far away from you. You're now going extreme right to extreme left to defend. But you also have some more open spaces, I would argue, that aren't nearly as, like... And the chokes and the small spaces aren't as pivotal to the entire map. I mean, he basically abused, like, the central nervous system of that map. You know, he went through the middle with the high ground that it had and how choky it was, and kind of worked around that central location. And on a map like this, like, there's not really that. You know, you look at the middle of the map here, and you're not going to be building planetaries and missile turrets here. I mean, you could, but it's not as good. You'd want to put it on this plateau. You don't put it on the high ground. You want to put it over here, and it just... You just hardly ever see that happen. Sometimes the planetary comes up here, and then they take a planetary here, and then they do hold this high ground, but then there's this whole left side of the map that hopefully is taken by the Zerg, is hopefully being pressured by the Zerg. It's a little more of a flexible map, I think, for those extreme late game scenarios, if we get there. You know, I'm saying, like, Serral might be able to have a better early and mid game, but that has not happened at all in any of these games. He was allowed to get to the late game last game. He didn't die. He got to his 90 drones on 5 bases. But he still lost. And it's not a guarantee that he can do that again, because Clem does have certainly a lot of power in the mid game. Once again, 3cc, not 2-1-1. I did misspeak. He actually did not always go 3cc 2-1-1. He had a 1-1-1 with the Banshees as well. So he is choosing. He's doing 2 different builds. It's very slight difference, but still. And he is going back to the 1-1-1 here. So a couple more Hellions, the Banshees included, and then still into that rock solid mid game with medevac drops. It's just, I think, for, like, all intents and purposes, it's basically the same. Not because it actually is. There are differences as far as your defensive capabilities, your offensive capabilities, the amount of, like, tanks you have and stuff like that. There are differences. Whoop, that's not going to work out. Clem not going to get an easy win by diving into the natural. But rather, if kind of a lot of the game is dependent on whether or not Serral can appropriately get his 4th and his 5th, and whether or not he can actually drone to a safely to a good number. If those are the main questions, Clem's build still comes to the same head, which is, does he just kill you at that point? Whether it starts with Hellions and Banshees, or it starts with, you know, 2 Hellions and a lot of Marines. Overlord's going to get a very good scout and confirm that Banshee is on the way. Sport Brawlers will have to be made, but at least you know that it's worthwhile. And then perhaps you also grab, let's say, a lair, maybe a little bit faster too, so you have the Overseer ready to go to defend the Queens, because that did happen. He was a little late to the Overseer, and it did cause some kerfuffle, it's my favorite word, around his 3rd or 4th base on, like, game 2, was it? So in this case, he should be really rock solid against the Banshees, like no interruption whatsoever. Hellions checking around for any drone attempting to migrate over to a 4th base. The first Banshee actually just ran across the map and is only guarding against the 4th attempt. Not looking to do anything more. Second Banshee is going to complete. Stim's on the way. Barracks are being moved over. And Serral actually takes the vertical 4th base, we'll call it, rather than the horizontal 4th base. Which, you know, it's not a bad idea, and there's kind of bonuses, pros and cons to both 4th bases. But this one is obviously not having to be harassed by a Banshee. It's kind of nicer. And the Overseer is prepared, so should Serral want to go ahead and quickly take a 5th as well, which, very common. Yeah, he's actually capable of doing it. Baneling Nest is done, Slippery Cloaks is on the way, Evolution Chamber is forming, and perhaps 1-1 within 15 seconds. Needs more gas on the Carapace. Either has not intentionally saturated this 4th gas, or actually has made a macro mistake, guys. I'm not one to call out Zerg macro mistakes, trust me, but okay, he does fix it. That actually might be why his Carapace was a little later. 1-1 is going to be faster for the Terran anyway. That is not atypical for most Zerg builds, I guess. There are fast 1-1 builds, of course, but, yeah. And so that's your lot in life. 4th base is completed. Drones getting the saturation going. 5th base was not taken extremely quick. It wasn't like a double expand, but it is still coming down quickly. 6.5 minutes. And the Banshees, where are you? Oh, there you are. Banshee's going to go in for a couple of drone kills. And then get stuck in a corner. So the Queens will eventually have to move to help out against drops, to help creep spread, to help inject, and the Banshees should be able to get away. Second factory already on the way for Clem. You know, one thing that he seems not to really care about doing is going for an 8 racks. And I imagine a 4th CC around this time as well. It's usually around this time. Yeah, he's got an SCV waiting for it. He's got 2 tanks ready to push forward here. Decent amount of Marines as well. 6 Hellions still also could contribute to this fight. Better if they're Hellbats, of course. Tank a little too far forward. Does get taken down. But I would say minimal losses on the Zerg side. Takes away that anchor point, the really brutal one as well. Gives you a couple more seconds till the second tank tries to replace it. It looks like Clem's not going to really play with fire too much. Actually puts it in a very reserved location, maybe hoping that Serral gets drawn into it. Serral going to go for more of a surround, however. Does actually take care of this fully and completely. Nicely done. But Serral's now having a bit of a macro problem. 1,200 minerals in the bank. 5th base is done, but no Queens injecting. Banshee seeing an opportunity to both escape and get some damage done. Also alert the Marines to an opportunity. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. Banshee's coming in as well for some extra DPS. Hatchery could be focus fire down. Some transfuses are available, and that's exactly what Serral's going to try and do to save the day. No Overseer. Serral did recognize that. Overseer is on the way, and that hatchery remains just healthy enough to not get sniped by the Banshees. 5th base will be saved, but I'm still seeing some money in Serral's bank right now. 10 larva, not a whole lot to work with when you're still on Ling Baneling. Does start up a lot of upgrades, takes up most of his gas. Finally getting a pop of the injects as well as adding a couple of more Queens to help with that. Once again, trying to swarm the army when Clem isn't paying attention, but of course he is. I definitely wasn't. He picks up in time. Still microing on the right side. 4th CC is completed. Moving on over as I take a look at it. Hellion still around and turning the Hellbats too. 4th base now also, or 5th I guess now actually clear. Banshees can help out in the run bys. And this is now the main attack point for Clem. Serral might realize it, but what can he do about it? He only has so much creep spread to work with. His hatchery is still down at below half health. Could be sniped just with a handful of Marines. They could sacrifice themselves for that. 4th base is scouted by Serral with a Ling, but he's got bigger problems right now. The Marines easily dodge away from the initial Banelings, trying to catch those Widowmines. So far, Widowmines not popping off terribly. Serral, gotta be very careful with how he handles this. If you commit too much to trying to swarm this and take it away, you could actually just straight up lose the game. If you overcommit with Banelings and you have none as the Marines collect themselves, then you're in a lot of trouble. But that actually was a snipe on the hatchery. It was also Banelings connecting with a handful of Marines. Tanks with a little more alone, and the Lings do end up taking them out. Serral, though, on 4 bases, 85 drones, never really getting onto the other side of the map. Creep spread really not looking fantastic for further defenses. Is still overall looking to be in a poor position as he is also on his last life in the tournament. 2-2 finishing up for the Terran. Very close behind him is the Zergs. Not too big there. Actually going to find a moment to go for a little bit of some counter pressure. Finally getting on the map. Clem not expecting it. Tanks got swarmed, but he will hold on, obviously, to his side of the map. Widowmines got planted. Bio got concaved, and Serral could just only take that little moment. That little moment when Clem wasn't paying attention. That's the only thing he's gotten so far. Double drops heading to the main base. Serral reacts to it. Another attack on the front lines, too. Also going to be able to clear up some creep spread. Clem moving on to a 5th base. 3-3 has yet to start. And that would be the next big worry for Serral. He's got a couple of Vipers to his name. Literally 2. Mostly Ling Baneling, though. No Lurkers, no Hydras, no Ravagers, no Ultras. And these are units that are not supposed to continue on by their lonesome into the late stages of ZVT. It's got to be a little more complicated than that. And if you are on basically all Ling Baneling, you really want to be in a very, I think, aggressive state. You want to have all your army and a lot of nook and crannies disrupting the Terran. Oh, that was a good Widowmine shot. Another snipe on the hatchery. Parasitic Bomb looking to kill at least one of the medevacs. A little late on the micro there for Clem, but he does get out of there with 3 medevacs worth of units. Serral not only losing a 5th base of mining, but also, again, larva? Okay, that's not a problem anymore. Hatchery did go up in the main base, so never mind on that one. He's good on Larva. Still, overall, you want the economy because at 11.5 minutes, you are mining out of main and natural. 6th base is going to be killed, not canceled by the looks of things. Nope, that was a cancel. 2 hatcheries killed on the bottom side. What am I not going to get the best shot? Serral holding on, but it does feel like he is paddling right now. He's like doggy paddling in the water right now. Serral trying to keep afloat, has not really officially been on Clem's side of the map. Just that one brief moment through the seaweed, and that was it. 4th base not touched for Clem. 5th base not touched for him. 6 is on the way. 3-3 did finally start up. Serral's Carapace actually, well timed for it, but can he actually finish it? Clem just continuing to hammer him on 2 different directions. Right side now includes Ghost. Left side will include Ghost eventually too. Serral also below 80 drones. Can't get another base up and running. Finally going to try and go for the bottom left one. Still not really advancing his technology. Going to try and swarm this army. Get the Lings behind. Widowmine gets dragged a little bit. Banelings come on through, and this will be a hold. And he's even pushing the creep threat out a little bit more. You can clearly see that he's taxed. I mean, these actually, you know, if he was totally okay, no problems, those would already be moving on. But he has tried to track Clem from a whole of this game, and now, you know, he's very well aware that he needs to get some jabs in himself to actually make this a truly contested game, and so this is his attempt to do so, but off of creep is always dangerous for Zerg players, especially when the Terran is now obviously recognizing your intent. They're like, oh, he's trying to attack me, let's get a concave, let's bring all my units back to the fold, and let's defend with some SimCity. So that's not going to work. Serral not really finding a moment. He is going to try and catch Clem over chasing. No Infestor to really punish it, though. I think we don't have any Infestors on the field. 2 of them did just pop. Burrowing up now. They want to go ahead and abuse the chase that Clem, you can always depend on Clem doing. But it's been a problem of having enough firepower post-fungal. That change here in this game? Maybe. Serral is still maxed out. A little bit of a bank. Finally getting some bases up and running, too. So he has a little bit more of a bank, I guess. More bank. Something in his back pocket to rely on in case this does not get dropped. I don't know, though. Clem, pretty good about dropping all these bases. Scan on the ramps. Want to see if there's Infestors or Burrowed Banelings, actually. Banshees coming back are going to do a little bit of that advanced scouting. They're going to die. Oops-a-daisy. Not the most important thing right now. Ghosts, far more important to control. And the Vipers, once again, getting sniped. I'm not going to say it's easy for Vipers not to get sniped, but this is actually the most Viper snipes I've ever seen in a single series, I think. Oh, and the Infestor gets scanned. Here's the thing. If Serral ever looks like he's going to engage, it's kind of a tell. Oh, that was a good Widowmine shot. Oh, and the Fungal, again, is just useless. Yeah, if Serral ever looks like he's about to engage and you've already kind of played your hand on the fungal part, then Clem's going to be aware that you're going to try and fungal him when you engage. Another Viper pops and dies. My goodness. This is not a safe series for Vipers. Bottom left base goes down. Serral desperately needs one of these bases to survive, and this one also looks like it's going to fall. The last Viper comes in, gets one parasitic bomb that is effectively useless. Only one medevac. Viper otherwise not helpful. Banelings rolling on in, trying to connect to those ghosts. Not going to happen. And that's all the Banelings gone, by the way. No more Banelings, no more real firepower. Infestor gets caught by the scan. Kind of lucky on that one, but another scan just to ensure no more Fungals. Not that a Fungal would be enough. He needs Banelings. He needs more DPS. Serral desperately trying to hold on to this base, a base that he absolutely needs, and he will not be able to do it. That is it. Serral taps out and gets 5-0'd. And Clem looked almost perfect. As perfect as you can get in StarCraft 2. Hot damn. So yeah, that's how this rolls, guys. Clem did go on to be interviewed, and he did say exactly what I brought up. That, basically, he knows that if Serral's going to try and engage on him, that there's going to be an Infestor. So the Infestor surprise, not as useful as it was in Atlanta, but then there's just no follow-up in any of these games because Serral was already losing. He was already behind. In a lot of ways, a lot of more subtle ways than supply in all of these games. And we were talking about how Oliveira might have a point, saying that maybe Terrans need to improve their macro because he played a different macro game versus Serral in Dallas. And I was like, oh, that's actually that's a cool point. Okay, I'm very interested to see if there's any meta development for that. Clem just freaking knocked that over. He was like, I don't need any changes. Just play more perfecter, okay? And now it's really Serral that needs to think about how he approaches a player like Clem. Do roach-based plays work anymore against Clem? Even the defensive roach play that's supposed to make him rock solid struggles against someone who's so attentive to his units. Does he need to play different types of pacing styles? You know, like there's some kind of cheeky, like 60-ish drone, almost all-ins that Zerg can do with Ling Baneling that we saw Clem falter against in a couple of open cups. You know, I think it's not that would be your silver bullet against Clem, but rather that it would be something to make him doubt. I feel like they both played a very comfortable game for both of them, which is majority macro. And Clem proved to be the better macroer. And that's great, but that doesn't always mean that you're the best StarCraft 2 player, right? If people are able to throw wrenches into your plans and make you doubt yourself, then that can actually stop you from winning a championship. And that's happened to Clem before, too. But Serral just seemed incapable of actually making Clem sweat. His all-lanes were too on the nose, too obvious, too done. And his macro games were too dependent on his own perfect defense. When he finds someone who's basically perfect on offense, it's not good enough. If you want to find out more information about Clem's thoughts, he did do a post-game interview for the main stage. He also did a post-game interview with Katz that was on social media. He'll probably talk more about it with some of the French guys as well. Serral made a tweet, very Serral-like tweet, but he does, he wears his heart in his sleeve, and that's usually someone who's very emotional. That's obviously not Serral, but I do think he's very blunt. And he's very in tune with his own, feelings. And he just basically said, like, disappointed, but that's what it is. And it's like, that's probably exactly what he thinks. And last note before I end the cast here is that, talk to Raynor, talk to the co-casters, and kind of a general consensus was that Raynor might have actually been far more of a difficult opponent for Clem. He was able to take the 2 maps off of Clem. That was all he lost. And that was when Raynor says he wasn't even playing at 100%. And I think Raynor is exactly the type of Zerg player that I was trying to describe, where there's a couple of more of those cheeky jabs, those like early Ling swells off of 60 drones that disrupt Clem's expectations. Yeah. So, I mean, Clem just solved the versus Serral matchup, I think. But versus Zerg, that's still a little more in question. And we'll see more developments if we get more StarCraft 2 tournaments. If you guys want to see more StarCraft 2 tournaments, the best thing you can do is actually to fill out the survey that was posted on the EWC Twitter for StarCraft 2. Also retweeted onto my Twitter if you want to check that out. Tell them you love StarCraft 2 and you love ZombieGrub. And the other guys too if you want to. And that would actually help a lot. And tweet at them, and post, and social media, and all that good stuff. Because StarCraft 2 hangs in the balance. We have no idea what's happening. But hopefully this was not the last premier StarCraft 2 tournament. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. If you watch it for the first time, you watch it for the second time. Either way. And I will see you later for more StarCraft. Bye-bye.